Chant the name of the Lord and His glory unceasingly, that the mirror of the heart may be wiped clean, and quench that mighty forest fire, worldly lust, raging furiously within. O name, stream down in moonlight on the lotus heart, opening its cup to knowledge of thyself. O self, drown deep in the waves of his bliss, chanting his name continually, tasting his nectar at every step, bathing in his name, that bath for weary souls. Various are thy names, O Lord. In each and every name thy power resides. No times are set, no rites are needful, for chanting of thy name, so vast is thy mercy. How huge then is my wretchedness, who find in this empty life and heart no devotion to thy name. O my mind, be humbler than the blade of grass. Be patient and forbearing like the tree. Take no honor to thyself. Give honor to all. Chant unceasingly the name of the Lord. O Lord and soul of the universe, mine is no prayer for wealth or retinue, the playthings of lust or the toys of fame. As many times as I may be reborn, grant me, O Lord, a steadfast love for thee. A drowning man in this world's fearful ocean is thy servant, O sweet one. In thy mercy, consider him as dust beneath thy feet. Ah, how I long for the day when an instant's separation from thee, O Govinda, will be as 1,000 years, when my heart burns away with its desire, and the world without thee is a heartless void. Prostrate at thy feet, let me be, in unwavering devotion, neither imploring the embrace of thine arms, nor bewailing the withdrawal of thy presence. Though it tears my soul asunder, O thou, who stillest the hearts of thy devotees, do with me what thou wilt, for thou art my heart's beloved, thou and thou alone. Om Madhuvata Ritayate Madhuksharanti Sindhavaha Madhvi Irna Santoshadhihi Madhunakta Mutoshasi Madhumat Parthivagum Rajaha Madhudyorastu Nafpita Madhumano Vanaspatir Madhuvagum Astu Suryaha Madhvirgavo Bhavantu Naha. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om, may the winds bring us happiness. May the rivers carry happiness to us. May the herbs give us happiness. May the night and day yield us happiness. May the dust of the earth bring us happiness. May the heavens give us happiness. May the sun pour down nothing but happiness. May the cows yield us happiness. Om, peace, peace, peace. A wealthy man requested an old scholar to strongly influence his son away from bad habits. The scholar took the youth for a stroll through a garden. Stopping suddenly, he asked the boy to pull out a tiny plant growing there. The youth held the plant between his thumb and forefinger and pulled it out. The old man then asked him to pull out a slightly bigger plant. The youth pulled hard, and the plant came out, roots and all. "Now pull out that one," said the old man, pointing to a bush. The boy had to use all his strength to pull it out. "Now take this one out," said the old man, indicating a guava tree. The youth grabbed the trunk and tried to pull it out, but it wouldn't move. "It is impossible," said the boy, panting with effort. "So it is with bad habits," said the sage. "When they are young, it is easy to pull them out, but when they take hold, they cannot be uprooted." The session with the old man changed the boy's life. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us from home. Today's topic is establishing spiritual habits. Because we are human creatures, we are humans, and humans are creatures of habits. And to be able to understand their consequences in our lives is key, essential. Swami Dhyanayogananda says, cultivate the habit of constantly remembering God. Whether you are idle or engaged in work, this constant flow of thought towards God is meditation. Cultivate the habit of constantly remembering God. Whether you are idle or engaged in work, this constant thought, this constant flow of thought towards God is what we call meditation. Neither time, nor place, nor circumstances need to be taken into account in this practice. Listen this carefully. Neither time, nor place, nor circumstances need to be taken into account in this practice. Plunge it. Oh, the joy of it. If you once taste that joy, everything else will lose its savor for you. Cultivate the habit of constantly remembering that, what we call God. This constant flow of thought towards God is called meditation. Now, establishing spiritual habits. We definitely have managed to establish many, many habits that we may not call spiritual. There have been a lot of discoveries in the field of habits and our power to change them or to create new ones. And eventually we can turn them into our second nature. With the new discoveries of this science of habits and the discoveries in neuroplasticity, that is the ability of the brain to form and recognize synapses connections. Also the brain's capacity to adapt to change. It has been proven that we can, with a lot of willpower, change our habits. Even though the old man at the beginning said, it's going to be impossible, well, now with the new discoveries, neuroplasticity, neuroscience, And lots of this research on habits, it is possible. And it's something that science has been working lately, but the ancient sages, they knew this. Swami Dhyanayogananda also mentioned that in order to counteract our habits, we just need to practice the opposite. So the topic of habit has become very, very popular lately with the publishing of a few best-selling books. The Power of Habits and also Atomic Habits, and most of you must be familiar with them. Now, what is habit? Habit is an automated and repeated behavior, a routine or practice performed regularly, an automatic response to a specific situation. We repeat over and over in the same context of environment. These automated behaviors run in our subconscious minds. We have done it so many times that we don't pay attention to these behaviors anymore. We do it, but we are not really there. Sounds familiar? Now again, there are lots of research and products out there that assert that we can change any habit. And indeed, companies really took advantage of this and manipulate our habits all the time these days with our phones, technology. So this is the reason to stop for a moment and to start thinking about the person that you really would like to be. Would you like to be the person that the society and these companies, these products want you to be or to become, or the real person, the real man of your ideal? We can think about all the notifications we get on our phones. And there are people out there whose job is to interrupt us, to break our attention and get some more dopamine. And you all know what dopamine is? I get there. But because of that repetition turns into a new habit. Every time you get a message on your phone, the brain releases dopamine. Today, everything is programmed in such a way so that dopamine gets released in the brain. Everything is programmed in such a way that dopamine gets released in our brain. Thanks to these researchers. We are already slaves of nature, and we don't have to imagine what is happening in today's world. We all know in Vedanta, we say that unfortunately, until we wake up, we are slaves of nature. And in these days, with all this going on, new technology is even getting worse. We are constantly encouraged to go outside and to seek pleasure and consumption. We are being treated and considered like robots because habits have become so automatic that we stop thinking and respond following nature. Again, we are naturally designed to go outside But now we are not just motivated, encouraged, we have become slaves to the highest degree. In this modern age, you can spend all day being busy and not necessarily being productive, not getting anything done. This is a kind of a new thing because in the past, people were busy. People used to multitask a lot, but at the same time, they were productive. In the last 10 years, we have changed so radically and drastically that unknowingly we are being characters from a script of a horror movie, where people were just hypnotized. Remember that movie, The Time Machine? We were talking the other day in the kitchen. All of a sudden, they were in paradise, but unable to think by themselves. Or remember, resistance is futile from the Star Trek series. There is nothing you can do. You have been assimilated. The Borgs used to say. That was first uttered by an evil robot called the Borgs. That was in the Star Trek Next Generation, sometime between 1987 and 1994. Now, I truly believe that we are living in an era where we keep listening the whisper in our ears, resistance is futile. Which means don't bother resisting because we will overtake you. From this time forward, you guys are going to be my servant, says the Borg. Open your eyes. See what is happening. That is the reason why I thought about talking about spiritual habits. Because we are being encouraged to create new habits, and they are very powerful. Let us open our eyes. The thing is that we are not prepared to face this global problem. We have not prepared ourselves. We have new generations of young people spending hours being assimilated, and I'm sorry for those who like video games, by video games, for example, and other distractions. And that seems to be okay with them. But hey, eventually, you will have to pay the price of it. We are not being encouraged to think. And thinking is very, very important for us humans. It may not be a biochemical virus, people claim today, but it is like a cyber one. But instead of destroying your computer's memory system or messing up with it, it messes all of us up. It manages to take over our brain, and most importantly, our attention. And wherever your attention is, there you are. Wherever your attention is, there you are. That you have to constantly be bombarded with triggers. Check your email, Reply your emails. Check your WhatsApp messages, and you have to reply them right away. Otherwise, what would they think? That I'm not paying attention to them, or that I ignore them. We create so many open loops in our minds that by the end of the day, we are exhausted. Looks like we are mentally being hacked. And once hacked, we have to make efforts to hack our own system so that we can come back to be thinking beings. Free thinking beings able to make the right decisions. Decisions based on our values, on the things that really matter to us, and get control of our lives. We need to have a clear vision, a clear panorama, a clear goal. What am I doing with my life? What do I want to become? What do I want to be? What do you want to achieve in your life? And the question is, are you ready to lead a God-centered life? Are you willing to lead a spiritual life? A life centered on the spirit. Albert Einstein says, how many people are trapped in their everyday habits? Part numb, part frightened, part indifferent. To have a better life, we must keep choosing how we are living. Now, have you ever heard about the science of the habit loop? Excuse me. The habit loop started with a researcher from the MIT, Anne Graybiel, and with her papers published sometime from 2007 until today, and one specifically talks about good and bad habits. Every habit has 3 parts, and this was elaborated by Charles Duhigg, I think it's mentioned in his book, The Power of Habit. He says there are 3 things. There is a cue. For every habit to be a habit, there must be 3 things. Number 1, a cue, a trigger for the automatic behavior to start. It's like a reminder. Now pay attention, this is very good. A trigger. The second part is the routine. That is the behavior itself. It's what we call actually the habit. The routine. The third one is the reward. Every habit has a reward. And it is that makes our brain latch on that multiple behaviors that we do automatically. Wendy Wood, a researcher, she says that 40 to 45% of what we do every day is a habit. 40 to 45%. That's a lot. That means we do things mechanically. 45% of what we do, we don't think. The most important part is that every one of those things we do, they have a reward. That reward is called the release of dopamine. Now, what is dopamine? A compound present in the body as a neurotransmitter and a precursor of other substances, including epinephrine, thank you, which is another term for adrenaline, epinephrine. It is a type of neurotransmitter. Your body makes it. And your nervous system uses it and sends messages between nerve cells. That is why it's sometimes called a chemical messenger. It is a big part of our unique human ability to think and plan. It helps us strive. It helps us focus and find things interesting. Dopamine is a motivational molecule. This chemical is part of the brain's reward system. It's what gives us pleasure sensations and what it keeps us coming back to those. Dopamine plays a role in how we feel pleasure. Now, dopamine is an active neurotransmitter in addictions to substances, drugs or alcohol, as well as other addictions like gambling, for example. Now, there is something called serotonin, dopamine, just mentioned, oxytocin, and endorphins. These are all famously known as the happy hormones that promote positive feelings like pleasure, happiness, and even love. Now, these are all chemicals, part of our body constitution, biochemical beings as bodies in these bodies that we live in, not that we are. Hormones and neurotransmitters are involved in lots of essential processes like heart rate and digestion, but also your mood and feelings. They are the body's chemical messengers, and some of them are known for their ability to help people bond, feel joy, and experience pleasure. Understanding the importance of these happy chemicals in the brain and body and their impact on mental health is crucial. Because it's a fact. Whether you are a yogi or not, they are there. The feel-good hormones are produced by the endocrine system. There are some hormones which are involved in the regulation of mood, pleasure, bonding, and even pain relief. But that's not all. These chemicals are critical components of our health, like growth, development, metabolism. and reproduction too. Sometimes these hormones are called neurotransmitters, like the dopamine. There is really no big difference between hormones and neurotransmitters, except for where they act. Happy hormones travel through the bloodstream to different organs and tissues, while happy neurotransmitters only occur in the brain and central nervous system, where they communicate directly via neurons. This is wonderful. I love it. I think it's important that I mention this so that we understand. I know it may not be too spiritual, but it is. It is, if we consider this in our spiritual life. Now, what chemicals make you happy? The body has many feel-good hormones that boost mood and promote general well-being in many ways. Some are able to alleviate anxiety and prevent depressive symptoms, while others trigger pleasure, joy, bonding, and trust. Serotonin, the mood function. It's a mood stabilizer, well-being and happiness. Dopamine, pleasure, motivational role in brain's reward system. Oxytocin, bonding, love, and trust. And the endorphins, pain relief, and a runner's high and relaxation. How to stimulate them a little bit? Dopamine, the reward or motivational chemical. You can listen to music. You get moving. Get a quality sleep. Eat enough protein. Oxytocin, the mood stabilizer. Dinners with family and friends. Give a hug. Dance. Give compliments. Now, see how this is part of our lives. All this is part of what we are and our choices. Sometimes we feel like listening to music, the latest hit on the radio. And sometimes, hey, Swami, what are you listening? I don't know. It's just, I just turn on the radio and that's what it is. But it's good. It makes you move. Now the oxytocin makes you dance. And they are good. They are happy chemicals. Serotonin is the love, contentment hormone. We love that. Practice yoga. Spend time with nature. Be in the sun. Or achieve a goal. Endorphins is a pain relief or a painkiller. Move your body. Laugh a lot. Be creative. And if you like, you can eat dark chocolate too. So as I mentioned before, it has been proved scientifically that we can change our habits. We can get hold of ourselves and make the right decisions. We can create new programs in our mind. And from being incompetent, consciously incompetent to do something, we can change that into being confidence competent. And once we get there in every field, it's our choice, by our willpower, we can become unconscious confidence. That is how things become our second nature. Now, there are MRI studies that say that when you are trying to back your car out of the driveway, and you manage not to kill anybody, there is a load of dopamine release to your brains before you end the task, as if there is some kind of challenge. And you can imagine it is sometimes, because you don't get the whole peripheral vision. So you feel a spike before this kind of challenge. You start getting the sense of relief, of success, when you start backing up. Your brain starts craving the sense of relief. When it actually happens, you experience almost euphoria. Have you ever experienced that? Or when you parallel park, which sometimes is kind of difficult. You forget how to do it if you don't live in the city. And all of a sudden, you have to parallel park your car. Now, if you can figure out the cues in the rewards, you can start changing your habits. The triggers in your rewards, you can start identifying what is that makes you do whatever habit you have. Identify that cue. Identify that trigger. The thing is, we don't like to sit down and think about it. And today we are so busy, exhausted with all these open loops that we have. It was like, who's gonna, it's impossible, I can't change myself, I can't, I'm just. But we can get hold of ourselves and consciously think about this. As I mentioned before, we are thinking beings, and we have to make use of our intelligence. We have to. Being able to diagnose these cues and rewards give us control over so many things in our lives. Now, in psychology, there is something called the science of small wins. Have you ever heard about it? And which basically says that you shouldn't try to eat the whole apple in one single bite. You go slowly. Small wins. Probably that's what inspired my dear James Clear, the writer of Atomic Habits, which is a masterpiece. Start small. Allow yourself to feel a sense of little victories. These are called baby steps. Micro successes have the potential impact to really, really make big differences in our lives. I am a slow walker, but I never walk backwards, goes the saying. What you need instead of the big wins, is simply the forward momentum that small wins bring. What you need instead of the big wins is simply the forward momentum that the small wins bring about. You need these baby steps in your life. Make it small. Make these small victories something that you can accomplish. And these small wins are all around us. It's just that we don't think about them. We overlook them. The main problem is that we set our sights too high when we start out of the gate. Break it down into parts that you know you're going to win. And you also need to choose rewards. Try that. Tiny rewards. After I do this, then I will take a break. Or I will eat a chocolate cookie or something. Your brain starts associating this behavior with the reward. And the activity, whatever you do, becomes pleasant. Are you here? Or you want somewhere else? What is your attention? Now, the otherwise can happen, where instead of enjoying the possibility of a reward, you end up punishing yourself by doing everything at the last moment. I know that very well. And like, for example, you oversleep in the morning and you miss something that is very important to you. If you plan it out, if you have a plan, if you think about it beforehand, choose the reward, then it becomes pleasurable. And it can be just your own satisfaction, just for the sake of doing what you know you have to do. After humbly speaking, and without talking about myself, but after so many years, 28 years of leading a spiritual life, I can't do it without my morning meditation. It's just I can't live without it. It has become a huge part of my life, a big habit. Sometimes people say that the structure is not good, but we need a structure. We need some kind of a structure if we really want to succeed. In that structure, we can enjoy freedom. Now, in my last talk, I have 15 minutes, I talked about building your spiritual personality. It was a long talk, sorry about that. I had to kind of like fast forward and speak really very fast, and these concepts are so important, so I invite all of you to check our SoundCloud or Spotify and listen to it again if you haven't, or if you had already. So building your spiritual personality, the idea was that by understanding our own personality, we can create a system, a set of habits that can help us develop our character. If we understand our nature, our personalities, based on the 3 gunas. I'm sorry, I can't go back to that. Please check that lecture. After all, our personality and character is nothing but a series of repetitions. Unadopted or accepted patterns from other people that we believed could help us feeling more confident and stronger about ourselves. Sometimes we are nothing but a better, say, picture of our father, of our parents too. Now, quickly to remind you, these three gunas or the powers of Prakriti. Tamas is a dull mind. Speaking of mind, Sattva is a calm mind, and Rajas is an extroverted mind. Tamas hides awareness. Sattva reveals awareness. Rajas hides awareness. Back to tamas. A tamasic mind is dull, sluggish, lazy, and prone to depression. A sattvic mind is present, is wise, happy, and free of desire. A rajasic mind gets angry, experiences anxiety, frustration, aggression, boredom. They need to be active. Now, a tamasic mind, fear, their experience comes from fear. A sattvic mind interprets the experience as a truth. And a rajasic mind is led by desire. Now, the upside of tamas is that it allows one to rest. Sattva allows proper discrimination, and rajas is a great motivator to accomplish things in the world. Tamas hinders self-inquiry. Sattva facilitates self-inquiry. And rajas also hinders self-inquiry. Now, this is just to remind you of briefly what we talked about in my last lecture. Now, we talked about the ideal personality, where there is a huge preponderance or percentage of sattva. Because after all, we have to have little rajas and we have to have tamas, right? A little bit. In fact, our bodies are tamasic. It's so full of tamas. It pulls us constantly down. But the best combination was sattva, rajas, and tamas. I talked about this. Please check out my previous talk. And a person who has this combination, which is kind of like the perfect personality, is a very mature emotional being. Is a thinking person and expresses tranquility, serenity. He's calm, and his life is centered on the fundamental values. Now, why am I mentioning this again? Well, our whole life and spiritual life is all about being able to being centered in sattva guna. As I mentioned before, the goal is to become a brahmana, this perfect combination where we excel in sattva, in light, in clarity. That's what we want. And our life and habits must be centered there. Now, each man is an embodiment of his own nature. And the spiritual personality that we want to be, because we want spiritual habits in our life, will turn us into the best character. Now, all sadhanas, all spiritual practices are meant to transform ourselves, to make that transformation in our lives. Now, we have some basic personality, all of us, based on what? On our likes and our dislikes. In Sanskrit, it's called swabhava. Likes and dislikes make us experience our thoughts in our minds. Think about it. Our thinking process is centered in nothing but our likes and dislikes. Now, these thoughts that we entertain get nourished. And later on, they become our words. Later on, they become our actions. Swabhava, our basic personality, is expressed in thoughts, words, and deeds. Now, I keep coming back to this quote from Lao Tzu. Watch your thoughts. They become your words. Watch your words. They become your actions. Watch your actions. They become your habits. Watch your thoughts. They become your words. Watch your words. They become your actions. Watch your actions. They become your habits. Watch your habits. They become your character. Watch your character. It becomes your destiny. You see it? We need to get hold of that subtle thing, the mind, that expresses that thought. It all starts there. Swami Vivekananda says, and listen, for many of you may be Swamis and they know this, they read this so many times, but it's such a key. The samskaras are left by these impressions, passing out of our mind, each one of them leaving its result. I'm going to come back to that. Each samskara, the samskaras are left by these impressions, these vibrations, passing out of our mind, each one of them leaving its result. Our character is the sum total of these marks, our actions, starting from our thoughts. And according as some particular wave prevails, one takes that tone. Our character is the sum total of these marks, and according as some particular wave prevails, one takes that tone. If good prevails, it becomes good. If weakness, one becomes wicked. If joyfulness, one becomes happy. The only remedy for bad habits is counter habits. All the bad habits that have left their impressions are to be controlled by good habits. Go on doing good, thinking holy thoughts continuously. That is the only way to suppress base impressions. Never say any man is hopeless, because he only represents a character, a bundle of habits, which can be checked by new and better ones. Character is repeated habits, and repeated habits alone can reform character. Do you remember what vasana is? Vasana is a seed, the seed of desire. A desire that arises in you when you experience something with your sense organs. When you see something, a desire arises. But samskara is the plant, the grown plant already. The desire to possess, it becomes stronger in you with the samskaras. Anything that pulls you to act, think certain way, even though sometimes you don't want to. But it happens because it's already grown. The seed and the tree. Back to the beginning. Try to pull out that little plant. It's easy. But when it grows, it turns into a samskara. Now we need resolution. We need determination. We need shraddha. And we definitely need to pay attention to our thinking process and get hold of it. Be alert, aware, attentive, present. Practice mindfulness so that you know what's going on. What are your likes and dislikes? By identifying that, you can change. You can go back to those cues and change the rewards to become the person you want to be. Now there are many sadhanas, many spiritual practices, many values that are all mentioned in our scriptures. I can spend another 2 hours talking about that. There is no time, and I don't want to bore you. But the goal here is to get hold of ourselves. The Bhagavad Gita, go check it out. I'm doing these classes on Mondays at 7:30. Chapter number 4, after Sri Krishna describes and discloses to Arjuna the ultimate truth. Om Brahmarpanam Brahmavihi Brahmagno Brahmanahutam Brahmaiva Tena Gantavyam Brahma Karma Samadhina. Something that you guys all know. We chant before we welcome our food. Right after that, from verse number 25 to verse number 34, he starts giving a description of all these sadhanas. He calls them yajnas. Now there is a reason why it is called yajna, because there is an attitude of offering, giving to something higher, surrender to something higher, offering yourself to something higher. The first yajna is to offer yourself, is to offer and surrender your ego. Now, if I talk to you about renunciation, you say, oh, Swami, give me a break. No, don't talk about renunciation anymore. So, okay, fine. But you need to lead a life centered in Dharma. And you need to get hold of your mind. And you need to get hold of your sense organs by making the right decisions. There is no other way, unfortunately. And there is no shortcut. Cultivate the habit of constantly remembering God, whether you are idle or engaged in work. Cultivate the habit of constantly remember who you are, a divine being. God is expressing himself through you as you, limited by your own decisions and your own choices. You have to let God express through you. You have to allow that to happen. How do we do that? By working with our ego, by working with our selfishness, by working with our habits that turns us into a character. We need to start working with our basic personality, understand the degrees of tamas, rajas, sattva, and encourage sattva in our lives by practicing meditation, constantly remembering the object of your meditation. You become what you meditate upon. If you want to become something, you want to become the highest. And the highest is our idea of God. Constant repetition of the name of God is also another type of meditation. You repeat the name, and the sound, the vibrations carries a meaning that will transform you. Cultivate the habit of constantly remembering God, whether you are idle or engaged in work. This constant flow of thought towards God is called meditation. Neither time nor place nor circumstances need to be taken into account in its practice. Now remember, for any habit, there has to be a time, a space, and a circumstances for them to be triggered, for the cues to happen. Now here, any time, at any place, need to be a trigger for you to remember that God is in everything. It's a must. It's the goal of our spiritual life, is to be reminded by constant triggers, God is here, I am present. Transform your lives. If you say, Swami, I have so many bad habits, read Atomic Habits. I recommend that book, Atomic Habits and the Power of Habits. It's very interesting. It will help you. This constant flow of thought towards God is called meditation. Neither time, nor place, nor circumstances need to be taken into account in this practice. Plunge it. Oh, the joy of it. The joy of it. If you once taste that joy, everything else will lose its savor for you. Swami Brahmananda. The thing is, somehow, what is the ultimate sadhana? What is the ultimate habit in our spiritual life? To unite the mind with God. Unite the mind with God. Unite our likes and dislikes. Turn them all towards God. You must not forget Him. Not even once, says Sri Ramakrishna. You must not forget Him, not even once. Who is God? The Brahman. Consciousness everywhere. Manifesting in you and me everywhere. In material, immaterial thing, everywhere. Unite your mind with God. You must not forget Him, not even once. Your thought of Him should be like the flow of oil without any interruption. That's the standard. If you worship with love, even a brick or a stone, as God, then through His grace, you will be able to see Him. Remember what I have just said to you. One should perform such worship as the Shiva Puja. It's a ritual to honor God as Shiva. Once the mind has become mature, one doesn't have to continue formal worship for long. Religious practices. The mind then always remains. The mind then always remains united with God. The goal has been achieved. All those means that we embraced have yielded product. That means the mind then always remains united with God. Meditation and contemplation become a constant habit of the mind. And that's what we have to establish in our spiritual life. Thank you. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om, that outer world is Purna, full of divine consciousness. This inner world is also Purna, full of divine consciousness. From Purna comes Purna. From the fullness of divine consciousness, the world is manifested. Taking Purna from Purna, Purna indeed remains, because divine consciousness is non-dual and infinite. Om, peace, peace, peace be into all. Thank you.